Welcome to the deep dive. Now, if you're a student deep in hospitality studies, maybe right in the middle of a BS hospitality management program, well, today's discussion is really fundamental for your future career. We're moving past the basic textbook stuff today. We're focusing on the three huge dimensions that honestly make or break tourism in any destination. Our sources give us a really sharp look at what's called tourism's triple impact. We're talking economic, sociocultural, and environmental impacts. And understanding these isn't just about passing an exam. It's really what separates a decent manager from someone who can truly lead ethically in this industry. It's the difference between just counting the money and actually building destinations that last. Okay, let's unpack this.
That's exactly right. That differentiation is so crucial. For those of you aiming for roles, say, in destination planning or managing large resorts, maybe even pioneering ecotourism, these three dimensions, you often hear them as profit, people, and planet, they basically shape every big decision you'll face. If you don't have a solid handle on the real pros and cons, the positive and negative impacts of the industry, you simply can't manage it responsibly. And that's increasingly becoming the baseline expectation globally.
So why is this triple impact idea not just, a side topic, but actually core to the curriculum?
Fundamentally, I think it boils down to moving beyond just thinking about the immediate transaction, right? You're not just managing rooms or inventory. You're actually managing this complex web of community resources and all the relationships between stakeholders. Exactly. Let's maybe look at it from a strategic management angle. So understanding the economic factors, for instance, that helps you decide on pricing, right? Or where to get investment from, and how you allocate critical resources like land or labor within a hotel or resort. If you ignore the kind of secondary economic costs, your whole business model could eventually face local pushback.
And the people side of things, that sociocultural awareness, that's got to be the bedrock of ethical service,
So,
especially when you're operating near or sometimes even within diverse communities, maybe indigenous groups. You have to design your services to be, well, genuinely inclusive and respectful, mutually beneficial.
yeah, if you ignore that.
You risk serious social conflict, irreversible sometimes.
Critically, environmental knowledge
Yeah.
that guides basically every part of sustainable operations. And we're not just talking about, putting in a few low-flow shower
Oh,
heads.
it's bigger than that.
Much bigger. We mean designing, say, robust waste management systems for large resorts that don't just swamp the local infrastructure, or implementing serious energy reduction plans, or leading genuinely successful ecotourism projects that actually regenerate an area, not just sustain it.
And you see this reflected even in the education system itself, right? The sources mention how understanding these impacts supports key courses like sustainable tourism, cultural sensitivity. It aligns graduates with national standards that push for this kind of holistic, values-driven education.
Absolutely. If you graduate understanding impact analysis, you're immediately more competitive. It's that simple. You're set up to align your work not just with local rules, but with national tourism strategies and, crucially, global goals, like the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Employers are, believe me, actively looking for graduates who get triple bottom line thinking. That means focusing on profit, people, and planet all at once.
Seeing them as linked.
Exactly. As interconnected levers, not just separate boxes to tick. This kind of expertise lifts you from just being an operations manager to being, well, an essential cultural ambassador and a responsible leader.
Okay, now let's get into the money side. This is where it gets really interesting, I think, looking at the direct economic effects. I mean, tourism is obviously a massive global economic engine. There's no denying that. But the way the money flows, it's complex and often not very fair.
Let's start with the obvious positives, the kind of traditional arguments for developing tourism. You definitely see job creation,
Yeah, lots of jobs.
and not just high-skill ones. Often vital entry-level jobs for local communities. This boosts national income, GDP, and brings in needed tax revenue for governments.
Plus, tourism often forces infrastructure upgrades, doesn't it? We're talking major investments that actually help everyone.
That's a good point.
New airports, better bridges, roads that ease traffic. These benefit locals too, not just the tourists. That infrastructure boost is a huge win.
Those are the clear, sort of visible gains. But the economic downsides, they're often subtler and need much closer management. The sources highlight a few big risks. Two really hit residents' cost of living directly. First, inflation.
Ah, yeah.
All that tourist money and demand, it inevitably pushes up prices for local goods, services, especially housing. Life gets a lot more expensive for people who live there year-round and maybe aren't earning tourism wages.
And then there's the resource depletion issue. That's massive. A big resort might use way more water, more energy than a whole local neighborhood.
10 times, easily.
Wow. So that high demand, especially if it's seasonal, puts this huge, often unsustainable strain on local resources. Water, power grids.
Definitely. But for you as a future manager, maybe the two most critical concepts to really get are economic leakage and job instability.
Yeah.
Let's really dig into leakage for a second.
Leakage. Yeah, that's a term everyone in hospitality planning absolutely needs to understand. It often decides if tourism truly benefits the place it's happening.
Precisely. Economic leakage basically means the profits from tourism don't stick around locally, they flow out. Think about a big international hotel chain. They might bring in specialty foods, drinks from overseas, use foreign architects, foreign contractors for building,
Okay.
and then, crucially, send most of the profits back to their headquarters abroad.
So even if a tourist pays, say, $1,000 a night for a room, maybe only $50 of that actually ends up with a truly local supplier or employee once you factor in all the imports and profit repatriation.
That's the potential reality, and it can be devastating for local benefit. If we connect this to the bigger picture, leakage severely caps the long-term benefits for the community. A huge infrastructure project doesn't help locals much if all the money generated just disappears. And then there's the problem of seasonality of jobs.
Right. The work isn't always steady.
Exactly. Employment is often unstable, not year-round. This makes it hard for locals to get bank loans or make any kind of long-term financial plans. A community totally reliant on seasonal work is, well, it's fragile.
I think the real challenge here, though, is that stopping leakage often means choosing to be less efficient in the short term, right? It's usually cheaper, easier to just import fancy salmon than to build up a local, sustainable supply chain.
Yeah.
How realistic is it to expect big companies to prioritize local economies over immediate shareholder demands?
It's a massive challenge, no doubt, but that's exactly the tension we're preparing you to handle. Responsible hospitality management is about finding that sweet spot where sourcing locally becomes both economically possible and ethically the right thing to do. Maybe it's through government incentives, maybe it's growing consumer demand for authentic local stuff. It takes creativity, not just cutting costs.
Okay, let's shift gears now to the people side of things, the socio-cultural dimension. This is all about that dynamic, often delicate relationship between the visitors and the local people. This is where you really step into that cultural ambassador role.
On the plus side, tourism can be a really powerful connector globally. It boosts interaction, helps foster understanding between locals and, international visitors. It gives locals fantastic chances to promote and showcase their own culture, their history, their traditions. That can create a real sense of pride.
And that feeling of empowerment you mentioned, that's key too. Locals can feel genuinely valued because of the jobs and the global spotlight tourism brings. It can give worth to traditional skills, crafts that might otherwise fade away.
True, but the downside here, it can be substantial and often, sadly, irreversible. The sources really stress the serious risk of cultural erosion, or even a complete loss of authenticity.
Commodification.
Exactly, commodification. Culture risks becoming just a standardized show put on for money instead of a living, breathing, evolving tradition.
Yeah, I mean, if 80% of a town's income relies on selling authentic experiences, the dances, the clothes, the rituals, how long before it stops being real and just becomes theater?
Yeah.
Performed on a schedule. That shift from life to performance, that feels like the deepest risk here.
And beyond that kind of slow erosion, you see immediate impacts on residents' quality of life. Imagine living on a quiet street that suddenly becomes the backdrop for dozens of tourist photos every single morning.
Yeah, that would be tough.
You get overcrowding, constant traffic, a real loss of personal privacy. Your daily life sort of becomes public property.
And we can't ignore the potential for social breakdown either. When tourism isn't managed well, it can sometimes correlate with rises in crime, drugs, gambling, prostitution. These are sort of the darker consequences of unchecked mass tourism.
And perhaps the most severe impact, displacement. Locals being moved off their traditional lands or out of their homes to make way for development.
Right, a new resort, a golf course, a wider road, it all needs space. And often it's the local residents, especially vulnerable ones, who end up paying the price through forced relocation.
This socio-cultural area really presents the sharpest ethical dilemmas, doesn't it?
It feels like it.
You get the benefit of showcasing culture, earning income, but you risk destroying the very thing that attracted people in the first place. A responsible manager has to actively create systems to protect local traditions from the industry itself.
Okay, shifting now to that third crucial pillar, the environmental dimension. This one feels maybe the most urgent because ultimately the planet's long-term health determines if the destination even exists in 10, 20 years.
Absolutely. The upsides here are quite compelling because tourism often relies on beautiful natural environments. So paradoxically, it can become the strongest argument for protecting them. It creates the political will sometimes for specific environmental laws and local ordinances that might not otherwise get passed.
That makes sense. It also provides vital money for conservation, right?
Yeah.
And increases environmental awareness among both tourists and locals. It can offer real sustainable development incentives.
Yes, and tourism investment can even help revitalize degraded areas, clean up polluted rivers, reforest hillsides to make them attractive again.
But the immediate physical impact on the ecosystem, that's unavoidable, isn't it?
It is. You see significant disturbance, displacement of local plants, animals, their habitats, both during construction and then ongoing operations.
Wildlife paths cut off by roads, coastal areas wiped out for resorts.
Exactly. And this is often followed by just general, persistent overuse of limited resources. Water, energy. High-demand resorts need vast amounts, often creating conflict with local needs, like farming or just residential use.
And then there's the pollution. Air, water, noise, just sheer waste disposal that often overwhelms local systems.
You mentioned sustainable development incentives earlier. But if the downsides include things like permanent habitat loss and draining the water table, how can future hospitality leaders really make sure their big decisions prioritize genuine sustainability, regenerative practices even, over just maximizing short-term profits?
Is it possible that a lot of so-called sustainable initiatives are just, well, kind of low-level greenwashing, enough to look good, but not enough to really cut into the bottom line?
That is the critical question, isn't it? If you're going to be a manager in this field, you have to be able to honestly assess your environmental footprint. The risks are just too high otherwise. Remember, the environment, the beaches, the forests, the wildlife, that's usually what attracts the tourists to begin with.
Right.
Pollute the water, destroy the reef, dry up the local wells, and you've completely undermined the economic reason for being there. Real sustainability isn't just marketing. It's absolutely fundamental long-term risk management. Hashtag Shack Summary and key takeaways.
So, this whole deep dive really brings us to the core challenge. Tourism is incredibly powerful, but it's truly a double-edged sword. It drives economies, connects cultures, sure. But it also puts constant pressure on local communities and the natural world. Your job as a future professional is learning how to wield that sword responsibly, ethically.
And your ability to manage those trade-offs. That's what will make you valuable, what employers will look for. So to help cement this for your studies, for your future career, let's quickly recap the key terms we covered today. You really need to know and apply these.
First, triple bottom line thinking. That holistic view guiding your strategy. Profit, people, planet.
Then, economic leakage. Remember, that silent drain on local prosperity.
Cultural erosion. The risk of turning living culture into a stale product.
Seasonality of jobs, that instability factor affecting communities.
And finally, sustainable development incentives. Those need a critical eye to make sure they're real, not just greenwashing.
So what's the bottom line for you? It means mastering these impacts is what separates OK managers from leaders in fields like destination planning, corporate social responsibility, or CSR, and senior hotel management. The industry genuinely needs people who can handle this complexity, who see sustainability as completely intertwined with profit, not as some separate, nice-to-have, #HasVotero.
All right, we want to leave you with a couple of tough questions to think about, especially as you start planning your own career path. These don't have easy answers, but grappling with them is what defines ethical leadership in hospitality.
Okay, first one. Given that huge risk of economic leakage, what specific, maybe innovative investment models could a local hospitality business use?
Yeah.
Not just to hire locals, but to make sure profits actually stay and circulate within the community, really boosting that local multiplier effect.
Good one. And second, how could a manager, say, at a busy resort, balance the constant pressure to maximize profit against the immediate environmental cost of using too many resources? Like specifically, how do you manage water use during a drought when local farmers desperately need that same water? What kind of non-negotiable limits does a responsible manager have to set, even if it impacts short-term earnings?
Your ability to come up with practical, ethical, and financially viable answers to questions like those, That's what will set you apart.
Keep exploring these ideas, keep digging into the sources, and start thinking now about your future role as an ethical cultural ambassador in this vital industry. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.